Hi 2F. I hope that you guys had a great weekend. I'm so excited today because we're going to read our last chapter of The Chocolate Touch by Patrick Catling. And if you remember before, John had gone, he found that candy store again where he had bought the chocolate, and he talked to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper was telling him kind of a lesson, right, that John was supposed to learn from all this, to not be selfish, to think of others before himself. So John had run home, and remember, he was running home to see if his mom was still a statue of chocolate or if she was back to her normal self. So let's see what we think. Chapter 12. The front door was open, and John rushed into the living room where he had left his mother. She was not there now, but on the chair was a small, wet lace handkerchief. John ran into the dining room and on to the kitchen. As he came to the kitchen door, he heard the ring of silver against crockery. Then he saw a wonderful sight, his mother arranging the coffee things on a tray. He dashed into the kitchen and flung his arms around his mother's waist, sobbing and laughing with relief and joy. "There, there," said Mrs. Midas, stroking the hair from John's forehead. "You've had a very disturbing day, dear, but in a few minutes we're all going to have supper and everything will be fine again. Goodness, I do believe I need some coffee myself. I felt so strange just then in the other room. I really don't know what came over me." So there's John, and you can see he's so excited to see his mom. The door from the garden opened, and Mr. Midas came in. "Before we settle down," Mrs. Midas said to John, "have a glass of good cold milk. You look so hot." So they didn't know what had happened to her. Well, John thought, he certainly wouldn't scare them by telling them. He watched gratefully as his mother took a frosty blue jug from the refrigerator and poured from it a glassful of icy, creamy milk. Trembling with nervousness, John tilted the glass against his open mouth. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's still going to be chocolate, or do you think it'll be milk? The liquid flowed in and down his throat and remained purely milky, deliciously milky, tasting of nothing but fresh, clean milk. After the first long, wonderful gulps, he suddenly recalled that he had not thanked the storekeeper for saving his mother. "Mother," he said, "may I go out for a minute? I'll be right back." "All right, John," she said, "but supper will be ready in 10 minutes. Don't keep us waiting." John ran briskly down the street until he came to the corner where he always turned right when he was going to Susan's house. There he turned left instead and started along the 2 blocks of unfamiliar street leading to the candy store. Soon he came to the corner where the red brick building had been. But there was no building and no store and, of course, no storekeeper. In the corner lot there was nothing to be seen but a heap of rusty tin cans and broken bottles surrounding a signboard with new lettering that said, "Sold." The end. So, what lesson do you think John learned in this story? The storekeeper was trying to teach John a lesson, and I want us to think about, what lesson do you think the storekeeper was trying to teach him, and so what message do you think it has for us in our lives? So you guys can pause the video here for a minute if you want, and you can think to yourself, or you can talk with someone at your house if they're available about what you think the message was of the story and what you think John learned. So in this story, we see that this magical store appears, right? And it makes everything that John eats turn to chocolate, right? Which is something that he said he would want. And if you remember in the beginning of the story, he never cared to eat well, right? And even though his parents said it really upset them and it made them worried, it didn't bother John, right? He didn't care. But once he started having everything actually turn to chocolate, he realized that maybe there is such thing as too much of a good thing, right? And the lesson the storekeeper wanted him to learn was that he had to think of others instead of just himself, right? So when things were turning to chocolate, he was upsetting Susan, his friend, his mom turned to chocolate. People were getting upset, right? It wasn't just affecting John. And so a lesson that he learned here, right, is to think of others and not always just think of ourselves, right? And a lesson for our lives, the message the author could want to send to us through the chocolate touch, is to always think of others too, right? And maybe not just the way that we feel about something, but think about how what we're doing and how we're acting is affecting other people and how they're feeling about it too. So I know that you guys do this already. You're a thoughtful bunch, but something just to keep in mind, books usually a lot of books have messages that they want us to think about and use in our own life too. So as you guys are reading books this summer, and as you continue to read books in 3rd grade, be thinking about what lesson is the character learning, and so what message maybe is the author trying to send to me. I have loved sharing this book with you guys. It's one of my favorites. I hope that you enjoyed it too, and I will see you guys soon. Bye, 2F.